we as a church gather today, not just because it's Sunday. We gather today because of why we exist. We just celebrated our 6th birthday last week. Lots of cake was consumed, I'll just say that, and other things. But we exist to glorify God. That's why we're here, to bring glory to God. What does that mean? It means to take our life and to point it to the greater glory and goodness and grace of God. How do we do that? We cultivate disciples of Jesus. That word disciple has been hijacked by everyone and everything. And disciple, when we're talking about from the Bible, it's a learner meant to be a follower. But because so many different people use it, we've had to define it in a very unique way for us. A disciple is someone Jesus saved, Spirit-empowered, child of God. Disciples of Jesus, saved by Jesus, empowered by the Spirit, children of God the Father. And discipleship, it's not just a class you take, it's the life you live. It's an all of life, meaning for the duration of your life and containing everything about your life. An all of life relational journey, relationship with God, relationship with others, of following Jesus, because if you rise from the dead, you call all the shots. To the Father, empowered by the Spirit, whereby we are redeemed, Jesus saved, adopted, children of God, and transformed, Spirit empowered. Disciples of Jesus, how? By magnifying the wonders of the gospel, those wonders that Lindsay welcomed us into today. The wonders of the gospel, the good news of what Jesus has done for us and what the Spirit is doing in us. So why? Every soul in Pearland and beyond would flourish. What does that look like here? What does that look like for right here, right now? It's disciples in community on a mission. Disciples in community on a mission. This Sunday gathering is the central hub gathering, but it's not the only way and time and place we gather. We gather in smaller pockets of groups outside of this called discipleship communities, where we learn how the gospel informs and transforms every area of life. We disciple one another. And then from there, you have redemption groups where guys or ladies are really digging into the nitty-gritty of life and how Jesus wants to transform that. And then you just don't go there, but you also serve together in the church, but also as the church. And as we gather, we grow, and we go together. And so that's why today we're starting a brand new series for the summer in the Psalms. Why are we doing a series through the Psalms? And some of you right now are like, we're going to do all 150? Not a chance. No, but why are we doing a series through the Psalms? Psalms highlight so much about life. Joy, peace, pain, victory, defeat, loss, gain, stress, anxiety, peace, and much more. And much more. Psalms are from and for a people who experience all of the up and down of life. It's a perfect backdrop and a playlist for all of life. And that's why we want to spend some time in the Psalms. Now, you may be wondering what's going on with playlists. So I went to the museum. I checked out this archaic thing. This is called a cassette tape. And some of you are like, what in the world is that? Don't worry. You can touch it later, but don't do too much. This is what we used to record songs on another prehistoric thing called a radio station. And what we would do is we'd listen to the radio. When our favorite song came on, we would record it on the tape. We'd not get the beginning because, of course, you didn't know it was coming. And you probably wouldn't get most of the end because the radio edits of the songs would always cut the last 20 seconds off, so you get a lot of, like, Mattress Mac ads, okay? And then another blast from the past, CDs, compact discs. This changed our world in 1986. Because then you could record full songs, or if you're borrowing a CD because you didn't want to buy it yourself, you could just listen to the whole thing without worrying about it, and you would make your own CD playlist. We would call them mixtapes back in the day, or mixed CDs, for if I'm working or working out or yard work or school work or work. It was just the backdrop for life. Psalms are the backdrop for all of life. The idea of this playlist is not new. It's both old and it's necessary. When you and I remember that the people of God for thousands of years have been utilizing these songs and poems as ways of expression, as ways of prayer and worship, when we remember that, things get rekindled for us. Things get set alive again for us. Whether things are good, God's at work. When things are bad, God's at work. When you can't predict one thing to the next, God is at work. And we need a playlist that reminds us of the truth of God for all of life. Now, some of you may be thinking right now, hold on. Man, Psalms are old. I mean, aren't they as useless and outdated as your cassette tapes? No. Here's why. Because the Psalms show us how our faith is set up uniquely for all aspects of life. All of them. And so, as we walk through the Psalms summer, let's introduce ourselves to what they are and what's going on with them. 150 Psalms, divided into 5 separate books within a book, if you will. Book number 1 is Psalm 1 through Psalm 41. Then you have book 2, Psalm 42 through 72. Then you've got 3, 73 through 89. Book 4, Psalm 90 through Psalm 106. And then book 5, Psalm 107 through 150. And so each of these books actually will end with a refrain of praise of some sort. Who are some of the people who wrote these Psalms? David? Solomon? We even have one from Moses, Psalm 90. A bunch of Psalms from the sons of Korah. Who are they? They were worship leaders for Israel. We have a number of Psalms that we don't know. But they're uniquely given to us so that we would behold God together. In Psalm 1, I would argue it's there in the lead-off position so that we would set the tone for the rest of the Psalms to kick this off. Like, how many of you have been to your favorite artist or band in a concert? Raise your hand. And you were speculating, what are they going to lead off with? And they have the song to kick off the show. Set the tone for the rest of the time. This is what's happening with Psalm 1. And in Psalm 1, we'll summarize basically 2 ways for you and I to approach life. 2 ways of thinking about life, whether under the rule of God or under the rule of self. Under the rule of God or the rule of self. And by the way, if anyone ever tells you, like, the Bible was written by a bunch of dummies, Psalm 1 will point them wrong. Because it's rooted in what's called a chiasm. A chiasm is a teaching structure. You go A, B, C is the central thing, and then C2 is the inverse, then B2, then A2. Check this out. Okay, you'll see the way of blessing, verse 1. Continuance in the Lord's law, that's 2. Then the enduring fruit tree, and then flipping it, the impermanent chaff. And then you're not continuing in the Lord, you're not standing in his judgment, and then not the way of blessing, but the way of perishing. That's incredible. The intricacy and the artistry that this employs. But it's so much more than just a neat way of sketching a design. There is wisdom and instruction for us to take in. These ways of life, how we express them. It comes from you thinking about it. And I think I need to get a new microphone. how will I approach life? Will I approach life under the rule of a loving, wise God? Or will I approach life trying to banish him from life and thinking, I know what's best, I know what's right, I know what's good? Those are two different ways to live. Those are two different approaches to how we think on this. And both of those approaches have consequences. So if you have a Bible, go ahead and take it out or turn it on. Let's meet up together in Psalm 1. We'll read the whole psalm. It's not that long. And if you don't have a Bible with you this morning, we got the verses here on the screen. And come find me afterwards, and I would love to give you a Bible so you can know the God who had it written, so you can know what he's all about. Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. And all that he does, he prospers. The wicked are not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Notice three movements in the text. One is the worthy way of life. Verses 1 through 3. The worthy way of life. Blessed is the man, blessed, happy, enriched, nourished, helped. Blessed is that man. Blessed or happy is this man who walks or goes not. And some of you right now, wait a minute. Are you doing that? Are you doing that thing that I've heard people do? We are going to define our faith by what we don't do and who we don't hang out with? No. It's designed for the clearest of all possible comparisons and contrast. Blessed is the man who does not stand, walk, sit, does not go and walk in the counsel of the wicked, accepting their advice, or standing in the way of sinners, agreeing to do specific things and walk in specific ways, or sits in the seat, the dwelling place of scoffers, adopting their general attitude. Tell me something. Have you ever been around a scoffer? Have you ever watched YouTube? We have industries about this. And you notice that you stand, or you walk, you stand, and you sit. It's a deeper and deeper involvement. And it goes deeper and deeper and deeper ingrained into you or to me. You're going further and further down the drain. More involved with each word. A great word, though, the word but. But this is where we turn. This is where this whole passage turns. The psalmist has taken us low. Now he's going to lift us up. Instead of delighting in this way, his delight is in this other way. The law or instruction of God. He delights in God. He's so saturated by this. He's not just merely doing these things. He's actually meditating. Now, real quick. Biblically, meditation, look at me for a second, is not emptying your mind. No, it's actually filling up your mind with God's word. And so instead of doing all these things, he's actually doing something radically different. He's thinking on God, what God has said, what God is doing. Say, someone were to ask you, what do you think about all day? Could you write down the main themes of those thoughts? He meditates day and night. There's this saturation about him. He's just steeped in it. Well, Jason, that sounds like work. It is. It is work. By the way, the other way of life, that's work too. It's not a question of like, if these worldviews require work, what's the payoff? What's the result of that? It's a great deal of work, but the work is actually a delight because he values the counsel of God. This is how, pointing us forward actually to how like the gospel changes our heart's motivation. Where before we wouldn't want a thing to do with God because of the work of Jesus in his life and his death and his resurrection and his ascension. Obeying where we did not, fulfilling what we broke, now is actually actively working to restore our broken relationship with him by his goodness. And now he changes the heart to where more and more, we're not just being renovated, we're being rebuilt. Where once this was not pleasing, now we're actually growing in our appreciation and our desire for this. Because what you work for, what you work on, you get a wage for. You get that. What's the result of the delight in the heart? You ready? He's like a tree. Now, to 21st century ears, that does not sound like a compliment or something great. A tree? Yeah, because back then, trees were symbols for life, not death. He's like a tree planted by streams of water, getting nourishment, growing stronger. Not only that, gives out fruit at the right time, grows in season, quietly, steadily. Not an overnight sensation, but a steady growth. And the best part, like the leaves do not wither like the grass will by 11 a.m. The leaves don't wither because they're connected to all the water they need. It's evergreen. The ultimate result, all that he does, he will find it to prosper. He'll bear appropriate fruit. This carries over into all that this person does. And this is not the only place you see imagery like this. An interesting parallel is found in Jeremiah 17. Jeremiah 17, 7 and 8. And we did not coordinate this before I was opening up the liturgy this morning. I was like, oh my gosh. Minds think alike, and great minds think alike here. Here we go. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, whose trust is the Lord. He's like a tree planted by water that sends out its roots by the stream, does not fear when heat comes, for its leaves remain green, is not anxious in the year of drought, does not cease to bear fruit. What do we do? Fill your head and your heart. The truth of God. And as a result, watch what happens. You've seen this compare and contrast. You've seen the worthy way. But another movement in the text, verse 4, the wicked way. The wicked way. So if a man who delights in the Lord is like a tree that bears fruit, this person who is walking, standing, and sitting in the seats of sinners and scoffers will not be that way. He will not stay there long. They're not firmly planted. Even if for a time it seems like they're prospering, they won't. Other psalm writers will notice that for a season, people walking the wicked way seem to be doing great. And Psalm 1 says they won't have fruit that lasts. Rather, they're like something else. This interesting word called chaff. 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 When you take husks of grain, they're blown away by the wind. When you're trying to winnow on the threshing floor, you would take the grain, kind of put it up, grain would fall, you'd put it down, and the chaff would just kind of just go away. No permanence, no lasting, nothing to stay put. They would be gone. Interesting parallel in Jeremiah 17 again, verse 9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? So you see this comparison and contrast. The biblical writers, psalmists, and even the prophets, comparing these two ways of life. Opposed to the tree, the way of the wicked, it is rootless, weightless, and ultimately useless. How's that for a legacy? So you've had the wicked way, the worthy way. Last movement of the text, really the weight of each way. The weight of those ways. Each of them carry a consequence. Therefore, he says, declarative, therefore, the wicked, even though they're standing earlier in the way of sinners, they will not stand in the judgment. Why? Who are they standing in front of? The holy God, the perfect God. The God who is completely, as one theologian would say, other than. This God, Jesus knows their defenses, their excuses, their reasons. And Jesus, by the way, judges perfectly. Have you ever heard someone say, didn't your Bible say don't judge me? Yeah. You know who said that? The one who's going to judge. Perfectly. Nothing escapes his eye. You're safe here. How many of you, when you were kids, snuck and did something that your parents did not see? Okay. All right. The rest of you are just still afraid your parents are watching, I guess. All right. Yeah. Unlike that, when you think like maybe mom or dad doesn't see, the same God whose eye is on the sparrow is also on you and I. They're not going to stand bowed up in front of a holy God. They won't. And that, you kind of get your head around. But this next phrase, some of you may be like, what? Nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. I thought we were all sinners. Yes. How are you guys standing in a congregation then? Good question. It's because of what Jesus has done for us. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, the Apostle Paul talks about what we call the great exchange. For our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, that in him we might become the righteousness of God. In the great exchange, we give Jesus our sin, our traitor, our treachery, our traitorness, our treason, all of that, our rebellion, our rejection. We give it all to him, and he gives us his righteousness. Did you catch that? We give him all of the junk and the bad and the sin and the nasty and the gross, and he gives you and I righteousness. Have you ever wondered why we make a big deal about Jesus? Have you ever wondered why some people have hands up in the air sometimes, just in a joyous exclamation, you have made me right before you? How can I stand in a congregation knowing that I am a sinner? It's because in Jesus Christ I have been made righteous. My position before him is right. I have the right standing of Jesus. Is it because I'm that great? Absolutely not. It's because he is. How in the world can any sinner stand in the congregation that they're not right? You're right, we're not. In fact, we know our wickedness. We've asked God to redeem and change us. That's what happens in the gospel. God begins to change the heart. He changes the heart instantly, and then that's called justification, and then over a long period of time, called sanctification. He changes you to be more and more and more like Jesus as you walk along that worthy way. Notice how it closes. The Lord knows the way of the right standing, but the way of the wicked will be gone. Perish. Like wheat from the chaff. The logical conclusion. Interesting. Psalm 1 begins with the word blessed and ends with the word perish. Again, to contrast, to make it clear, these two approaches to life, these two worldviews, all this flows out of thinking on this. Thinking on this. How do you view life? What lens do you view life through? How are you thinking and processing? Because your thinking will lead to you acting. It will. Your thoughts will lead you down one way or the other. The worthy way, the wicked way, the weight of each of those ways. They all flow from what we dwell on. Please take this in. What consumes your mind will control your life. It will. Both in temporary settings and long-standing or eternal ones. We were meeting with some parents recently, and what was consuming the parents was the health and well-being of their young baby. Good. They're making sure baby is okay. That controlled how they did stuff. When it comes to eternal matters, what consumes you will control you. This is a wisdom type of psalm that is forcing us to think about what we actually think about. What we think about. And to think about it. And how much of our daily life and how much of even our culture here in the West revolves around you not thinking about it, but reacting. React. Don't respond. Don't take time. React. How do I know this? Have you had a commercial that says, buy now, and if you do it in the next 5 minutes, you get this too? They're not asking you to think. Instead, this psalm says, think. Walk this out. How do you and I respond rightly to this? One is examine our thoughts. Think about what you think about. When you have those free time seconds, where does your mind go? Think about what you think about, but also, let me suggest to eliminate. What are things that need to fall away so that you, this tree, bears great fruit? Some of these things are maybe not bad things. Some of them are just neutral things. Whatever it is, like what is getting in the way of you dwelling more on the truth of who God is and what he's done? And then evaluate. Like how can you or will you in this station of life seek to fill your mind with thoughts on God and his word? And that looks different for different stages in life. For the parent who is a toddler, you may get a few seconds while they're asleep or not, doing something else, eating or whatever. You may have just a few seconds. I'm not trying to shame you into why aren't you having 30 minutes in the Bible every day? I'm not saying that at all. I'm just merely asking this. How can or will we fill our mind with thoughts on God and his word? And the good news is that you and I do not have to do this alone because we can't. We're a people who have been planted so we can help plant. We are rooted so we help others be rooted. So while you help one another by your words to them, by your checking in with them, by your phone calls and texts and accountability, you and I help each other grow roots and bear fruit. What consumes your mind will control your life. Church, we're under the gracious control of a great God. Will you pray with me?